It's 2 p.m. and you're sweating through your shirt, standing next to an air conditioner. You're still hot. Now remove the air conditioner. Remove the walls. Remove the roof. Remove the stored food, the dry clothes, the waterproof jacket, the hot drink. Put yourself in the Sahara, or the Arabian Peninsula, or Central Australia, 60,000 years ago. In July, the ground is hot enough to cook meat. The air temperature is pushing 50 degrees Celsius in the shade. Except there is no shade. Not really. Your body is losing water faster than you can find it. Your brain is starting to make decisions that don't make sense. You don't notice. That's the first symptom. How do you survive that? Not as a thought experiment, as Tuesday, because for the vast majority of human history, deadly summer wasn't a climate headline. It was the baseline condition of being alive for millions of people across the hottest regions on Earth. And ancient humans didn't just survive it. They figured out, without sunscreen, without hydration science, without a single weather app, how to keep a species alive in heat that would kill a modern human within hours. Let's find out how. Start with the most immediate threat summer creates. Not sunburn, not discomfort. The real killer is core temperature. The human body runs at 37 degrees Celsius. Push that number to 40 and your organs begin to fail. Push it to 42 and your brain shuts down. The window between feeling hot and dying is narrower than most people ever realize. Modern medicine calls it heat stroke. Ancient humans called it dying for no visible reason. A person who was fine in the morning, confused by midday, and dead by afternoon. No wound, no predator, just heat. Ancient humans knew this. Not from a textbook, from watching it happen. So the first strategy wasn't technological. It was behavioral. They simply stopped moving during the day. This sounds obvious. It wasn't. Every instinct in a survival situation pushes you toward action. Find food, find water, move toward safety. The ancient human brain that conquered every continent on Earth was a restless, problem-solving machine. Forcing that brain to go still in the middle of the day required something remarkable. It required understanding that inaction was the strategy. Modern researchers studying traditional desert communities across the Sahara, the Arabian Peninsula, and Central Australia consistently find the same behavioral pattern. Activity before sunrise. A hard stop through the peak heat hours. Activity resumes late afternoon. This isn't laziness. This is thermal management, the same principle engineers use when designing cooling systems. You reduce heat load during peak input hours. You operate during the margins. Ancient humans figured this out through trial, error, and watching each other die. But stillness alone doesn't save you when the ground temperature is 70 degrees. You need water. And in a desert summer, water is the question everything else orbits around. Here's what nobody tells you about ancient water survival. The skill wasn't finding water. Not exactly. The skill was knowing where water hid. Desert environments are not waterless. They are water concealed. Dry riverbeds hold water beneath the surface long after the last rain. Ancient humans knew which riverbeds held subsurface water and which didn't. That knowledge was accumulated over generations and passed like property from elder to child. Certain plants are water indicators. Deep-rooted desert plants with green leaves during the dry season are drawing moisture from somewhere your eyes can't see. Ancient humans followed the green. They read vegetation the way a modern geologist reads soil strata. Animals are better water detectors than humans. Birds, especially pigeons and doves, fly toward water at dawn and dusk in straight lines. Ancient humans watched the birds. They followed the direction, not the animal. Morning dew on specific rock surfaces and plant leaves was collected deliberately. Archaeological evidence from the Negev Desert shows stone collection systems designed specifically to channel dew into collection pools overnight. This is infrastructure built for a resource that appears for less than an hour per day. That's not primitive survival. That's hydraulic engineering built from rock and patience. Now let's talk about something that gets almost no coverage. The sun itself. Modern humans interact with the sun through glass, through SPF 50, through tinted car windows. We have almost completely outsourced our relationship with sunlight to materials science. Ancient humans had skin, and clothing, and something we've almost entirely forgotten how to use. Clothing in extreme heat seems counterintuitive. Everything in modern summer culture points toward less fabric, not more. But But ancient desert populations across every continent wore more clothing in summer, not less. Loose, layered, light-colored fabric creates a microclimate between the skin and the air. It traps a thin layer of cooler air against the body. It blocks direct radiation from the sun. It slows evaporation of sweat, extending the cooling effect across a longer period. The Tuareg of the Sahara, the Bedouin of the Arabian Desert, Aboriginal Australians in the desert interior. All of them, independently, arrived at the same conclusion. Cover yourself in the heat. Use the fabric as a tool, not an obstacle. This knowledge wasn't written down for most of human history. It was worn, observed, copied, inherited by children who watched adults survive, and understood that the adults who covered themselves in the heat were the ones still alive by sunset. Let's talk about the body itself. Because ancient humans in hot climates were not the same body you're living in right now. Not genetically different, physiologically different, calibrated differently by a lifetime of exposure to a demand modern humans have almost entirely removed. The human sweating system is one of the most sophisticated cooling mechanisms in the animal kingdom. Humans have between 2 and 4 million sweat glands, more than almost any other mammal on the planet. We can sustain aerobic activity in heat that would collapse a horse. This is not an accident. It's a deep evolutionary adaptation, built over millions of years of life in hot African environments. But the system has to be trained. Acclimatization is real and it's dramatic. A person who moves from a cool climate into extreme heat is genuinely impaired for the first 1 to 2 weeks. Their sweat rate is lower. Their sweat is salter. Give that same person 2 weeks of progressive heat exposure and their body transforms. Sweat rate increases by up to 50%. Heat that was dangerous 2 weeks ago becomes manageable. Ancient humans living in hot climates year-round were maximally acclimatized. Every single day. We have the same hardware. We've just never installed the software. Now here's the part that changes how you think about ancient intelligence entirely. They didn't just survive the heat. They built social systems around managing it. In every traditional desert community studied by anthropologists, heat survival is a collective project, not an individual one. Water knowledge is shared and pooled, not hoarded. The elder who knows where the subsurface water sits in the dry riverbed 3 days walk east, shares that information with the group. Because a group that dies of thirst 3 days east is a group that takes all its other knowledge with it. Hoarding survival information in a desert environment is functionally suicidal at the group level. The decision of when to move and when to stay is made collectively, informed by the oldest and most experienced members who have survived the most summers. Their survival itself is proof of competence. Ancient desert communities did not make heat survival decisions by committee of equals. They deferred to the people who had survived the most. There's a reason elder care appears so early and so consistently in the archaeological record. The elder wasn't a burden. The elder was the reason the group was still alive. Let's zoom out one final time. Because the story of ancient humans surviving deadly summer is really a story about attention. Modern humans experience summer heat as a background condition, something the infrastructure manages for us. We walk from air-conditioned home to air-conditioned car to air-conditioned office, and we understand heat only as the uncomfortable gap between those 3 places. Ancient humans had no gap. They were inside the heat every hour of every day for months at a time. And because they were inside it, they understood it in a way that is genuinely difficult for modern people to access. They knew which hours were survivable and which weren't. They knew which terrain held cold air at night and warm air at dawn. They knew which animals became active at which temperature. They knew how their own bodies felt in the early stages of heat stress versus the dangerous stages. Because they had felt it so many times, they had built an internal language for it. That knowledge isn't lost. It's stored in the behavioral patterns of traditional communities still living close to those conditions. It's embedded in the designs of ancient clothing that outperform modern materials in certain heat scenarios. It's sitting in archaeological sites across the Sahara and Arabian Peninsula and Australian interior, in the stone dew collectors and the underground food caches and the campsites that are always positioned where the breeze moves and the shade falls longest. They survived the deadly summer the same way they survived everything else. Not by fighting the environment, by reading it so completely that it stopped being a threat, and started being a place they knew how to live in. The heat didn't change. They did. And the uncomfortable truth that sits underneath all of it is this. We have never been more protected from summer than we are right now, and we have never been less prepared to survive it without that protection. Every degree of comfort we've added has cost us a degree of knowledge we didn't know we were losing. They figured out how to survive the deadly summer with nothing but time, attention, and each other. We still have each other. The question is whether we still have the attention,